In the summer of 1518, a woman stepped into a street in Strasbourg and began to dance. There was no festival, no celebration, no musicians performing nearby, no crowd gathered to watch. According to historical accounts, she simply began moving through the street alone beneath the heat of a July sun. At first, few paid attention. Strange behavior was not entirely unusual in a world shaped by hardship, disease, and religious anxiety. But then something happened. She did not stop. Hours passed. The woman continued dancing. Day became night. Night became morning. And still she danced. Her feet swelled. Her body weakened. Yet somehow, the movement continued. The woman would later become known in historical records as Frau Trophia, and within weeks, what began as one person's inexplicable behavior would become one of the strangest mass events in recorded European history. Because eventually, other people began dancing too, and once they started, many could not stop. Today, the event is known as the Dancing Plague of 1518. More than 500 years later, historians still debate exactly what happened. The records themselves are surprisingly detailed. Municipal documents, physician reports, religious accounts, and later historical studies all describe an outbreak of uncontrollable dancing that spread through then part of the Holy Roman Empire. The official explanation, favored by many modern historians, is a form of mass psychogenic illness, a collective psychological response triggered by extreme social stress. But while that theory explains some aspects of the event, questions remain, and the deeper one looks into the story, the stranger it becomes. To understand the dancing plague, it helps to understand Strasbourg itself. Life in early 16th century Europe was difficult. Famine was common. Disease was common. Religious fears shaped daily life. Crop failures could threaten entire communities. Medical knowledge remained limited. People lived with constant uncertainty, and in the years leading up to 1518, many residents faced severe hardship. Poor harvests had created food shortages. Economic pressure increased. Disease outbreaks occurred repeatedly. The population lived under continuous psychological strain. Modern historians often point toward this environment as a key factor, because under enough stress, human behavior can become unpredictable. Yet, even with that context, the events that followed remain extraordinary. Within days of Frau Trophia's appearance, more dancers joined her, then more. Historical estimates vary, but some records suggest dozens of people were dancing simultaneously within weeks. Certain accounts claim the number eventually reached several hundred. The dancers did not appear joyful. This was not celebration. Observers described exhaustion, distress, physical suffering. Some reportedly begged for relief while continuing to move. Others collapsed from fatigue only to resume dancing afterward. The spectacle frightened authorities. City leaders faced a problem unlike anything they had encountered before. People were dancing uncontrollably in public spaces, and nobody understood why. This is where the story takes an especially strange turn, because the authorities consulted physicians, and the physicians reached the conclusion. The dancers, they argued, suffered from an excess of hot blood. The condition could not be cured through restraint. Instead, it needed to run its course. In other words, the solution was more dancing. Officials accepted the recommendation. Public halls were opened. Wooden dance platforms were constructed. Musicians were hired. Drummers and pipers accompanied the afflicted. The city effectively organized dancing infrastructure in an attempt to cure a dancing epidemic. For a brief period, Strasbourg became a place where authorities actively encouraged the behavior they were trying to stop. From a modern perspective, the decision appears almost surreal. Yet, within the medical understanding of the time, it seemed reasonable. And perhaps that detail reveals something important. When societies encounter phenomena they do not understand, they often respond using whatever frameworks are available, even if those frameworks later appear deeply flawed. Unfortunately, the strategy did not work. Reports suggest conditions worsened. More people joined. Exhaustion spread. Accounts from later historians describe dancers collapsing from dehydration, strokes, heart failure, or physical collapse. The exact number of deaths remains uncertain. Some dramatic claims may have been exaggerated over time, but few historians doubt that severe suffering occurred. Eventually, officials abandoned the dancing cure. A different explanation emerged. Many residents believe the outbreak was connected to supernatural forces, particularly the cult of Saint Vitus, a Christian saint associated in folklore with dancing afflictions and nervous disorders. Religious authorities became involved. The afflicted were transported to shrines. Special rituals were performed. Prayers were offered. And gradually, the outbreak began to fade. Within weeks, the dancing plague disappeared, almost as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind confusion, questions, and records that historians still examine centuries later. The most widely accepted explanation today involves mass psychogenic illness, sometimes called mass sociogenic illness. This phenomenon occurs when psychological distress spreads collectively through a group, producing real physical symptoms without a single, identifiable biological cause. Modern examples have occurred in schools, factories, workplaces, and communities around the world. Symptoms vary dramatically: fainting, tremors, paralysis, nausea, pain. The human mind possesses a remarkable ability to influence the body, especially under conditions of extreme stress. The theory fits many aspects of Strasbourg's situation. The population was under enormous pressure. Religious fears were widespread. Social contagion can spread behaviors rapidly within tightly connected communities, and yet, the explanation still leaves certain questions unanswered, because the reports remain unusual, even by the standards of mass psychogenic illness. The duration, the intensity, the number of participants, the apparent physical endurance involved. Some researchers have proposed alternative theories. One of the most famous involves ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that can infect grain and produce chemicals related to substances that affect the nervous system. Consumption can cause hallucinations, muscle spasms, and strange behavior. For years, some historians suggested contaminated food supplies may have triggered the outbreak. The idea attracted significant attention, but many modern scholars view it as unlikely. Ergot poisoning typically produces symptoms that differ from the prolonged, coordinated dancing described in historical records. Victims would likely have been too impaired to sustain such activity for extended periods. The theory remains part of the discussion, but it has lost support among many researchers, which returns us to the original mystery, not what caused the dancing necessarily, but what the event reveals about human beings, because the dancing plague demonstrates something deeply unsettling. Human behavior is not entirely individual. People influence one another constantly. Emotions spread, fear spreads, beliefs spread, expectations spread. Under ordinary circumstances, these influences remain subtle, but under extreme pressure, they can become visible in extraordinary ways. The outbreak transformed private anxiety into public behavior. One person became several. Several became dozens. Dozens became a community-wide crisis. And perhaps that progression feels strangely familiar. Not because modern societies experience dancing plagues, but because collective reactions continue appearing throughout history. Financial panics, social movements, moral scares, mass fears, moments when entire communities begin moving in the same direction, driven by forces larger than any single individual. The mechanisms change. The pattern remains. This does not mean the dancing plague has been solved. Far from it. The surviving records are incomplete. Witnesses interpreted events through the beliefs of their era. Some details may have been exaggerated. Others may have been lost entirely. We are attempting to understand a psychological event from 5 centuries ago using fragments preserved across generations. Certainty is impossible, and perhaps that uncertainty is part of the reason the story endures, because the dancers force us to confront an uncomfortable possibility, that human behavior is more fragile than we like to imagine, that under enough pressure, entire communities can become caught inside patterns nobody fully understands. The streets of Strasbourg are quiet now. The platforms are gone. The musicians are gone. The dancers disappeared centuries ago. But the question remained. On a hot summer day in 1518, why did one woman begin dancing? And how did that single act spread until an entire city found itself trapped inside the same strange rhythm? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere between psychology, history, belief, and fear. Or perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that we still do not fully understand it. Because if hundreds of people could once dance until collapse without knowing why, what other forces might shape human behavior today that we barely notice at all?